Truth Unveiled here, and today I have so much to share with you. Let's just get right into it. We're going to be talking about the total solar eclipse that's going to be occurring, but we're going to be reiterating some things and also talking about the stark predictive programming because it's everywhere. And I'm here at space.com that says partial lunar eclipse, a prequel to the 2017 total solar eclipse. Now, just this week, a few days ago, there was a partial lunar eclipse that occurred over the night skies in much of Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. And while the lunar eclipse did not occur in the Americas, we know that the total solar eclipse will, but this just gives more information about it. Now here's a map that shows you where the lunar eclipse was visible a couple of days ago. As you can see, it was visible here throughout much of the world and was not visible in the Americas. And now, less than 2 weeks from today will be the solar eclipse that will occur on 8/21/2017 and will be seen throughout all of continental USA. And this is very, very important indeed. I've already done a prophetic video on this and how this has to do with judgment. If you have not taken a look at it, please do. I'll be sure to link it in the description box below, and we'll be reiterating some of those points later on in this video to come. But now we're going to talk more about this eclipse and why it's not like any other eclipse and why we should not pass it off as, oh, just some other eclipse happening. Oh, no big deal. I'm telling you, this goes much deeper than we think it does. And now I'm here showing you the actual eclipse path map. And this map right here shows you the path of totality. I know I've gone over this before, but we'll just once again briefly go over it. So as you can see, it will start by going and passing Oregon in the morning, and then it'll keep going towards Idaho, and then also passing Wyoming, and then from Wyoming, it'll continue onward to Nebraska, passing Nebraska onward towards Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri. It then will go over all across Missouri, passing southern Illinois towards the Cairo region, passing the Mississippi, where it will continue on through Kentucky, and then finally passing Tennessee, all the way across places such as North Carolina, Georgia, and then all the way through South Carolina too, where it will then pass and go towards the Atlantic Ocean. Now, although I had not mentioned this before, what's very interesting and suspicious indeed about all of this is the places that this eclipse is going to pass and the totality places. So, for example, the first one will be the Cascadia region. Very interesting with the Cascadia fault line, because we know that FEMA did that drill back in 2016 along the Cascadia region. What are they getting ready for? And then it'll also be close to Yellowstone National Park, which is right here in this region, and that's all they've been talking about, and that's all we've been seeing is an uptick with earthquakes in that region. And then another region that's very suspect that we need to watch out for is the southern Illinois and southern Missouri area where the New Madrid fault line is, and then also to the Atlantic Ocean. And then I briefly also wanted to touch up on the other solar eclipse that's going to be passing over America in 2024. It will be going this way, as you can see, making a giant X over America, and X marks the spot in southern Illinois around the Cairo, Carbondale, Little Egypt region along the New Madrid. Now, I do not think it's a surprise or a coincidence that the path of totality for this eclipse just so happens to be passing over these major landmarks, and that your mainstream media have been subliminally telling you and subliminally conditioning you and getting you ready for major events that are going to take place in these specific regions. And even in predictive programming with movies such as 2012 and many, many others that all foreshadow and talk about Yellowstone going off, and also other ones having to do with the so-called comet coming and the West Coast being flooded. We see it all over the place, and we even see predictive programming here too that have to do with 9/11, and we know that they've done predictive programming with 9/11 all over, but even here too on an October 1976 Sesame Street cover. Now, before I keep going, am I saying that anything big or major will happen on the exact day of the eclipse or on September 23rd, 2017? No, I am not. The purpose of this video is to keep you updated and warn and sound the alarm as to what time we're actually living in, and to show you the predictive programming so you can see exactly what time we're in, because people still think that, oh, nothing's gonna happen, oh, business as usual, but we need to be ready at all times. Whether things start to happen 2 seconds from now or 2 decades from now, we need to be ready at all times and understand where we're actually living in. But as you can see in this cover, it shows what? A monster, or the Cookie Monster, eating what? The 2 twin towers, which alludes to 9/11. But I didn't even see this or notice this before. Now we see that this has to do with 9/11. And many have noted how this is showing and depicting 9/11 from 2001, but there's something else that many of us have missed. And do you see that something else? What is this showing you right here? And if you zoom in just a little bit more, you see that this is actually showing what it looks to be a total solar eclipse right there. Why are they showing that, especially when it has to do with the same cover depicting 9/11? And what happens if you add up the numbers 9 plus 11 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 1? You get the number 23. Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Now, if you can recall, I also did a video back in November 2016 that had to do with Kanye West and his speech and his announcement that was done around 11/19/2016. And I also noted in there that he talked about aliens and the threat of so-called aliens, but he also mentioned and made reference to this on 11/19/16, also written 9/11 twice. And I told you how the elite are planning a second 9/11. And we also see that here, but when is the question? And as you're going to find out in many films and TV shows, there's a lot of predictive programming when it comes to solar eclipses, just as much as there is with 9/11, And here is just a list of it. I'll be sure to leave this in the description box below. We're not going to go over all of it, but as you can see, even in novels, they have to do with solar eclipses and the predictive programming. Even in one book entitled Illegal Alien, where so-called aliens visit Earth and observe a total solar eclipse. Now, of course, in the book, it makes reference to the one that occurred back in Europe that was 18 years ago. But is this really referring to that eclipse, or is it actually referring to another one? Let's see what other films have to say. Now here's just a few of the films and a list of them that you can find where solar eclipses occur or have a big role and a big theme and play a major part in these films. We're only going to be going over a few of them. As you can see right here, they also are listed in King Solomon's Mines, Barabbas, 2001, A Space Odyssey, The Little Shop of Horrors, and many other films and listings here. Like I said, we'll be going over just a few of them, and we're going to be starting actually with this one right here, Little Shop of Horrors. And now we're going to be going over a series of films and a compilation of TV shows also that all talk about and have to do with a total solar eclipse or an eclipse mentioned in their films. And what you're going to see is exactly which one they're talking about. Now, what you're looking at currently comes from the film Little Shop of Horrors from the very beginning from 1986. And this film is based on the original musical from 1982 and also a film that was done back in 1960. And in the movie, it's about a florist, and ironically enough, during a total solar eclipse, the plant discovered by the florist feeds only on human flesh and blood, depicting, quote, the end of the world. And this is the caption at the very beginning, which says, on the 23rd day of the month of September, in an early year of a decade not too long before our own, the human race suddenly encountered a deadly threat to its very existence. And this terrifying enemy surfaced, as such enemies often do, in the seemingly most innocent and unlikely of places. And again, this is according to the film, this is not according to me. But notice how at the very beginning of this movie, they mentioned what, the 23rd of September? Huh, very interesting and suspicious indeed. If we keep going on through the movie, which September 23rd could they be alluding to? Now, once again, this is from the very opening of the film where the first song is being sung. And as you can see right here, they pan to a shot right here where it says, unexpected total eclipse, end of the world. And this is from the newspaper at the very beginning of the film. There's a total solar eclipse that's going to be occurring in America real soon. And then, no coincidence and no surprise, exactly 33 days later from this will be what? September 23rd, 2017, which will be the what? The Revelation 12 sign that will be seen in the sky. And we'll be going over more of that in its prophetic significance. And I know I've talked about that in previous videos too and related it to the eclipse. But what you're going to see also in other films is that they do the exact same thing, relating star alignments also to this, because that's another thing that's going to take place on September 23rd. And ironically enough, this film just so happens to take place in New York City where the first 9/11 took place. Are they planning a second 9/11? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. And we also know how the elite are using mainstream media to joke about the end of the world, and they're also subliminally joking and putting right in front of our faces themes and references to what they call the quote zombie apocalypse. That's also very interesting and suspicious indeed too, because didn't your government come out with the document that talked about zombie apocalypse and what to do with the zombie apocalypse? And didn't they also just so happen to mention and list the types of zombies that they're going to be fighting off should a zombie apocalypse happen? Didn't your government also plan this too? Or is this just a bunch of hoopla because your government and elite know exactly what time it is? The question is though, do you? The second film that we're going to go over has to do with ancient prophecies being fulfilled. It comes from the film Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, that was released in 2001 based on a popular video game series. And this movie has to do with the protagonist's character Lara, played by Angelina Jolie, who must recover an ancient triangle of light artifact before the Illuminati does, and has to do so in order to save the world. Now, in this movie, there are references to solar eclipse, star alignments every 5,000 years, great danger, the Illuminati, and truth right in front of us. And they just so happen to be making another version of this movie in 2018. What perfect timing indeed. Now in the actual movie, we're going to go over the scene where Lara Croft finds a book, and inside of this book is the all-seeing eye and also a letter from Lara's father, and this is what the letter reads. And this is a transcript from the movie. Lara, by now I'm sure you have discovered the clock I concealed. The clock is the key, Lara. It will unlock the hiding place of 2 pieces of a sacred iron. This is the magical triangle I told you about when you were little, the triangle of light, but it is no bedtime story. It was forged from metal found in the crater of a meteor that had fallen to Earth at the exact moment of the previous alignment of the 9 planets. The people of the light built a great city in this crater where they worshipped the triangle for its ability to control time. It gave its possessor a power that could be used for good or great evil. Their abuse of this power led to the destruction of the city. To be sure no man would ever again wield this power, the triangle was split into 2 pieces and hid at the opposite ends of the earth. Lara, do you remember the jasmine that only grows in one temple on the ancient Khmer Trail in Cambodia? This is the entrance to the tomb of the dancing light, where the first half of the triangle is hidden. You must be there at the exact moment of the second phase of the planetary alignment. You must hurry. You have very little time. As the planets move into alignment, the world will be in great danger from the secret society known as the Illuminati, devious, dangerous men who seek to fulfill an ancient prophecy by reuniting the two halves and attaining the triangle's awesome, terrible powers. This you must prevent at all costs. So, Lara, I'm asking you to complete my work, to find and destroy both halves of the triangle. Next film comes from 1997 called The Fifth Element, and this one's about a cab driver who becomes the central figure in stopping great evil from approaching. And like Lara Croft, this one also mentions star alignment, solar eclipse, and a 5,000-year ancient prophecy also. Now, this is at the very beginning of the movie, right before the so-called aliens have contact at an Egyptian temple. There's a group of interpreters who are interpreting the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and this is one of the interpretations that they read. And I'll be quoting from the movie verbatim, quote, "When the three planets are in eclipse, the black hole like a door is opened." Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos. When asked how long, the response is every 5,000 years. And then the movie fast forwards 300 years later into the future to a scene that just so happens to show a total solar eclipse. We also have the movie Hellboy that was released in 2004 based on the 1993 comics. Now this movie has to do with the portal opening back in the 1940s to free monstrous demonic creatures, sounds like CERN and we should be concerned indeed, and how that portal must be destroyed. But then Hellboy, who is then an infant demon, escapes through the portal and is adopted, and 60 years later, Hellboy is needed by Rasputin to open the gate of hell in order to bring in demonic creatures for the end of the world known as the Ogdru Jihad. But in the end, rather than Hellboy doing this for Rasputin and summoning the creatures with his horns, he ends up breaking the horns and then stabbing Rasputin, disallowing the creatures to come from the other world and from the portal to be opened. But in the film, notice how all of this, and notice how this scene itself takes place when? During an eclipse? Now, as you can see from these screenshots here, it's actually a lunar eclipse that takes place in the film, and they depict a lunar eclipse, but wasn't there a lunar eclipse just a few days ago? Just weeks before the total solar eclipse? Very interesting and suspicious indeed. And this movie has to do all with portals opening, doorways opening, the release of creatures to bring about the end of the world and cataclysmic events. Where does this sound familiar? I also thought it was very interesting to note how in the comics themselves, the Ogdru Jihad are fictional characters that are the Dragon of Revelation who are released from prison to bring about the end of the world. And their team affiliations include the Nazis, the Frogmen, and the Mayans too. And we'll be talking more about that when we go over the film Apocalypto. And then their notable alliances too are the Dragon, the Beast, and the Serpent. The same thing that we see in Revelation chapter 12, which is the same exact sign that we're going to see on September 23rd, 2017 in the sky. And notice how the publisher is Dark Horse Comics, the same as Katy Perry Dark Horse, which depicts Katy Perry on top of a pyramid, the capping of the pyramid, and also showing ancient Egypt, the New World Order too. The same Katy Perry who they depicted at the Super Bowl riding a beast. Oh, but there's nothing to see there. It's just for fun there. Oh, it's just fictional there. Hello, it's time to wake up to the world around us and to what time it really is and what they're really showing us. The next movie is Pitch Black, which was a 2000 film involving a team of survivors whose ship crashes on a supposed planet who then discover that an eclipse will bring about a deadly nocturnal creatures. Now, in the movie itself, these creatures are known as bioraptors, which are highly aggressive and animalistic creatures capable of flight and having a physiological aversion to sunlight, as if they can die if exposed to enough ultraviolet radiation. And, interestingly enough, roughly every 22 years, the planet undergoes a several-month-long planet-wide eclipse caused by an aligning of the planets and stars such that it sits in between two much larger planets. It is during this time that the bioraptors emerge from their underground dwellings and engage in mass feeding reminiscent of locust swarms. What does that remind you of? And it just so happens that this year alone in 2017, the star alignment or the Revelation 12 sign that's going to take place on September 23rd, 2017 occurs just 33 days after the total eclipse in America. Exactly 33 days, a little bit over a month. And during this time in this movie is when these creatures emerge. Another thing to note about this film is that one of the characters was involved with the Hajj, which is the Islamic pilgrimage, which, to no surprise, this year 2017, this is supposed to be on 8/30/2017 and lasting all the way until September 4th, 2017, right smack in the middle of the total solar eclipse on 8/21/2017, and then also the Revelation 12 sign and the star alignment in the sky on September 23rd, 2017. Again, I'm not saying that anything major will happen during this time, but I find it interesting that these movies in Hollywood and predictive programming is making and alluding to such a time frame. Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Just like this film here too, which comes from Omen 3, The Final Conflict, released in 1981. Now, this is a trilogy in the Omen series, and it has to do with the second coming, an adult Antichrist, and the attempt to prevent the return of the Messiah. And notice how this film was released on 3/20/1981, exactly 34 years preceding the 3/20/2015 total solar eclipse. And in the movie itself, it talks about a star alignment that occurs on 3/24/1982, which is the sign of the second coming. Just like in real life on September 23rd, 2017, this is when the Revelation 12 sign will be fulfilled, and also the star alignment in the sky, which, by the way, is the only time in history when there is such an alignment where the stars are aligned perfectly in this order, and Jupiter is in retrograde for over 40 weeks, where it is in the Virgo constellation. It will never occur like this ever again, and the elite know this darn well, and they know how important this is. Another movie is one that was released back in 2010, also known as Arctic Blast, and this one has to do with cold air blasting and spreading worldwide after a solar eclipse, triggering a series of cataclysmic and apocalyptic events. Another movie that's filled with symbolism comes from 1981, titled Dragonslayer, and ironically enough, it just so happened to be released the exact same year as Omen 3, The Final Conflict. And even in this movie here, they even show you an eclipse up there. But this is a fantastical epic, but in the movie itself, the main character encounters a dragon at the exact same point as a total solar eclipse is occurring and taking place. And during the total solar eclipse, you also see the dragon emerging. And this is right before the final battle in the film. But there is something else that this film also shows and depicts that's very interesting and suspicious indeed, as if dragons and eclipses weren't enough. There are also many scenes showing virgins that are offered up to the dragon also. In the movie itself, in order to appease the dragon, the king offers up virgin girls as offering per a lottery twice a year. Now that reminds us, of course, of Revelation 12 that talks all about the virgin and the dragon coming after the virgin, and how the dragon is ready to make war, and this movie just so happens to depict that too. Just like the sign in the sky depicting the virgin constellation and the woman being pregnant with child about to give birth. Oh my goodness, what are they really depicting? Is all of this a surprise or a coincidence? And then, towards the end of this film, when the main character breaks the amulet at the exact moment of the eclipse, the dragon is then destroyed and is then tossed into a crater lake, which immediately reminds us of the dragon being swallowed up by the earth. And immediately right after that, they then show the scene of the eclipse finishing up, and the total solar eclipse is now over with. I also wanted to note how in the film, the dragon is 400 years old. That reminds me of something else that's 400 years old that has to do with the eclipse and has to do with prophecy, prophetically speaking, when it comes to America and the people in America too. Is there another 400 that we should be concerned about concerning prophecy? Well, we'll find out later on, but now here's another movie that also features an eclipse, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto from 2006, and they even show you a total solar eclipse right here. Now this movie is a Mayan film that's about captives to be offered, and it's in the Yucatec Mayan language. And the captives who are about to be offered must escape, and this is just before the Mayan civilization comes to an end. What does this sound familiar? Now, in many ancient prophecies and ancient cultures, the total solar eclipse represented and had to do with human offerings, just like we saw in Dragonslayer. And in the movie itself, the solar eclipse happens right when one of the captives, or who is the main character, is about to be offered, but is then not offered because of the solar eclipse. And the fact that the movie is entitled Apocalypto reminds us of Apocalypse and even the movie 2012 with ancient Mayan prophecy. And then there are other films that also talk about and allude to eclipses in them, films such as King Solomon's Mines that was released in 1937, and also the film Barabbas that was released in 1962, also showing a total solar eclipse right here. And even in cartoon movies too, such as the 2002 film The Wild Thornberrys, where the main character Eliza helps save elephants, and on the day of a total solar eclipse, as you can see right here in the movie itself, the elephants come together. Such a similar depiction is also seen in the cartoon movie The Land Before Time X, The Great Longneck Migration, released only a year later in 2003, when during a solar eclipse the dinosaurs come together. And it's interesting because this movie is talking about dinosaurs. What do they know? And of course, we cannot forget about The Simpsons, where they too depict a total solar eclipse in Springfield in the episode Gone Maggie Gone, which is from season 20, episode 13. Now in the episode, Homer leaves Maggie on the doorstep of a convent, but when she disappears, Lisa then goes undercover as a nun to solve the mystery and find her. Meanwhile, Homer tries to keep Maggie's disappearance a secret from Marge, who was temporarily blinded while watching a solar eclipse. Now in the beginning of the episode where it's actually shown on the news report, they even show something like this where they show end of days. And then they also show the eclipse as it's happening. And then as the eclipse is ending, it then shows Marge being blinded. But as the episode continues to go on, they also make references to things such as the Da Vinci Code, child offerings, and the horrors of Catholicism, the Illuminati, the end of the world, and they even tell about ancient prophecies regarding Freemasonic founding fathers and a phony revolutionary war, and also the episode talks about a search for a gem and that the gem will be found after the first full moon following the solar eclipse. And this gem is to bring about world peace, and they're all after it. And this shows you Mr. Burns, who also is after it and even admits to being a Freemason. And even towards the very beginning of the episode, they show you the same exact path that happens to look just like the same path as the eclipse that's going to occur real soon. The path of totality is almost no different, even though they're telling us some truth. And then there's also more references and themes to child offering and human offerings, even from the comic Prisoners of the Sun that was released back in the 1940s. But now we're going to talk about the solar eclipse prophetically speaking and how this has to do with actual prophecy from Scripture. And I've reiterated this in my video done about 2.5 months ago, but once again we'll go over it again. But as you saw with the lunar eclipse that occurred 2 days ago, from the time of the partial lunar eclipse on the 7th all the way to the time of the total solar eclipse, that is a 14-day gap or approximate 2 full weeks until the solar eclipse occurs in America, which will take place for a period of 4 hours. Now, did something like this happen very similar in Africa back in the year 1619? Oh, of course it did, because in the year 1619, as of 627, there was a partial lunar eclipse, and then exactly 2 weeks later, on 7/11/1619, there was a total solar eclipse. And where was this? As you can see here, based on this map, the total solar eclipse took place in pretty much all of Central Africa and regions today known as the Congo, and also Tanzania, Mozambique, and even a little bit of Zambia and Malawi also. Why is this so important, and what does this have to do with actual prophecy? Because when you know who the people of Scripture are back then and even now, then you start to understand prophecy, and then you actually start to understand Scripture rather than the watered down versions and the lies and deceptions that are out there. And when you understand that the people of Scripture are not the people who are claiming to be the people, and not the people who are going around and pretending to be the people of Scripture, then you understand how Scripture and prophecy works, because exactly 40 days following the total solar eclipse in Africa that occurred in the year 1619 is when the first so-called slaves arrived in Jamestown, Virginia, or should I say the first Hebrews, the first people who are the scriptures of the book, when they arrived in America back in 1619 as of 8/20/1619. Now Deuteronomy chapter 28 verses 68 makes a whole lot more sense now. And so does the 400-year prophecy that's spoken of in Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 and 14, and also Acts chapter 7 verses 6 through 7. And because it's seen in the book of Acts in what's commonly known as the New Testament, we know that the 400-year prophecy is not talking about the first Egypt. And if you add 400 years to the year 1619, you can do the math on that, but I'm telling you, we're closer than you think. And then 40 days following the total solar eclipse that occurs on 8/21/2017, we land on the date September 29th, 2017, which is what? The Day of Atonement, just like 40 days after this total solar eclipse in Africa landed us right at when? The beginning of slavery in America. And it's no surprise either how the total eclipse is going to be passing over Carbondale, Illinois, just as we went over. That has to do with what? Little Egypt, as it's also known. And we've also talked about, and I've even done a post showing you how America is Egypt literally and spiritually. But if you would like to see more of that, please definitely take a look at the video that's linked in the description box below. But what you're currently looking at now, because in between the 40 days of the total eclipse and Day of Atonement, We have the Revelation 12 sign that has to do with the woman being clothed with the sun. The moon is underneath her feet. There are 9 stars that make up the Leo constellation, with these 3 stars right here for a total of 12. And then we also have right here the woman being pregnant with child about to give birth. And so we know that this is the fulfillment of that sign that is talked about in the book of Revelation chapter 12. Now, what's also interesting about this is the Jupiter's retrograde motion, the star that represents the Messiah, the King star, that's been in the womb of the Virgin for about 38 weeks now. And then culminating on this date, on September 23rd, 2017, the stars will align perfectly, and then the star will start to move down the womb and will travel down the womb, and has been here by this point for at least 42 weeks. And then based on what scripture tells us in the book of Yeshayahu, or Isaiah chapter 66 verses 7 and 8, it even tells us, and Yahuwah tells us, that the birth pains begin after the child is born and not before. And this also relates to the prophecy that's spoken of in Revelation chapter 12. This is one of the precepts and witnesses for it. So in conclusion, we see all of the signs in the sky, and we see the references for the eclipse in the Revelation 12 sign that occurs exactly 33 days later on September 23rd, 2017. We see how this eclipse is seen all throughout the movies and TV shows and predictive programming just as much as 9/11, if not more. And we know how this relates to Scripture, prophetically speaking, the people of Scripture, and the judgment to come that's soon to follow, because we know that it comes, sudden destruction comes when they say peace and safety as travail upon a woman. Of course, we do not know the future, and I'm not saying that anything cataclysmic will happen on any of these 2 days, but it's important to stay updated and aware of the world around us and the signs of the times, and to wake up to the truth that's right in front of us. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so you can continue to be awakened to truth and come out of the lies and come out of Babylon, come out of these religions quickly. Quick, fast, and in a hurry, because as you can see, time is running out. They're literally telling you what time it is. But now that you see the truth, know this, the truth will make you free. This is Truth Unveiled here, saying as always, Shalom.